All right. How is everybody doing? Hope everybody is settling in. Jake is slowly making his way home. So we will be starting soon. In the meantime, I will keep some of this music behind. How is this? Is this a good relationship between the music and my voice? Let me know if my levels are feeling all right. Beautiful. I've been excited all day. We have 4 stories lined up. Jake is almost home. He will be leading you through them. He's written some notes on how he wrote them, some background. Yeah, I don't know really what else to say except that we want to do more of this kind of curated movie nights. We might do some hybrid nights with some original written stuff or some of like almost DVD commentary style stuff like this. But I think more than anything, we want to get together and tell stories, you know? I think that's what Jake, the magic of Jake, is all about. So I think that's definitely something that we're going to be aiming for. So I'm going to play a bit more music, and when Jake gets on, I will be right back, everybody. Settle right in, because we're going to be hearing 4 stories from 4 different episodes. Elite Satanic Parties, which was episode 36. Moloch, which was episode 53. Prince Andrew Doesn't Sweat, which was episode 68. And Dinesh D'Souza, which was premium episode 23. And the common theme we have tonight, of course, demonic activity. In all of them, demonic activity is at work. So we'll be listening to them basically all together. And before and after, Jake's going to tail end them. I don't know. It's going to be weird hearing myself laughing inside the story's recording. But I'm used to this kind of stuff at this point. My brain is rot. Very little left. Yeah, we are going to do Subs Ice Borer. We just started. You know, this is like our 4th Twitch stream. But we have big plans for the platform. And we're definitely going to be affiliates soon. Just takes 30 days when you start an account fresh, you know? Yeah, the Prince Andrew stuff is going to be quite a techno party. I like any song. I mean, I'm sure by now you know this, but I'll take any excuse to turn something into techno. So if I can turn a story into like some sort of, you know, crazed, pulsating. That's right. I'm a Euro clubber. I'm Euro trash. I'm absolute Euro trash, dude. I would go to Pasha. I'm gonna tattoo Plur on my chest. The other two don't understand, you know, this is a culture I have to share with me, myself, and I. Jake just calls electronic music EDM. Absolute rube. Total American. Travis, forget it. It's not. Electronic music, not his thing. Swiss techno. I don't know much about Swiss techno. I can tell you some good French techno. I like Technasia from France, but the best techno is often from Berlin. A lot of the German producers are very, very good. I'd say one of my favorite tracks is by a guy called Nathan Fake, and he is British. I like the remix of his tracks, The Sky Was Pink by James Holden. It's probably one of my favorite tracks. And then I like harder stuff from like London, like acid techno from London, and then early techno from Detroit, and that's all American. I mean, really, that's where techno came from. So, and then it proliferated in Europe and fed back into each other and the scenes. Love Detroit techno. I love house. Love Chicago house. But I mean, I like more tech house or deep house. You know, I tend to not like music if it gets a little too saccharine when it's electronic. The current music, by the way, is our friend Pontus Berg's band, Thunder Tillman. Pontus Berg, of course, has made quite a few tracks for us. He made that epic track that we opened that journey right after Epstein, A Farewell to Epstein. The opening track and a lot of the stuff was him. And Yeah, he makes really cool stuff with like old synths and stuff. So I don't know where Jake is quite yet. Hopefully he's hopping on soon. I'm going to bother him again. But we will be kicking off. Thank you, Jamixon. The music on the pod lately has been a lot of Nick Senna, with, of course, some Pontusberg mixed in. But Nick Senna has had a huge footprint on the podcast musically. Yeah, his software is always rebooting. As we know by now, he is a boomer. And boomers, they trip over multiple things as they reach any mic. It's impossible for them to reach for a mic without hitting something with at least their fingers or jamming their toes on something. Oh, I'm chill, man. My life is mostly chill. I like to get worked up with the boys, and I can get real angry sometimes. That's why, I don't really know usually what other people are bringing to the table in terms of written material. It allows my fury to, let's say, develop in a more natural pattern. Oh, and today for a medical thing I'm preparing for, I can only have liquids. So I have not eaten anything all day. I feel absolutely terrible. I'm drinking black tea with honey in it and lemon juice. So... Oh yeah, taking a little sippy sip. Welcome to the channel. Hey, it's me. It's me, Scott Adams, and now we're gonna do a little something I like to call the simultaneous sip. All right, everybody, grab your glasses. Are you ready? Wow, that was great. What a sip. Welcome to the Sipping Lounge with Julian Feeld. All right, Jake... bothering him, saying sup. He's almost here. I know. I'm sorry, my voice is too relaxing and I slid into Bob Ross territory, not annoying enough, I'm too alpha. You hate to see it. Yeah. Oh, here he is. Are you ready to welcome in onto this stream? Hello there, sir.
Hello.
I think everybody can hear you now.
Oh, fantastic.
All right, so...
we've got 67 people watching. If we could just get 2 more.
Yeah. So, can everybody hear Jake properly? Jake.
Hello, chat. Hello, people. Men, women, non-binary folk.
Listen, it's a very big pleasure to finally have you on the podcast. Jake Rockatansky, the stories we love. Are you ready? Are you ready to... Yes?
Here's a technical boomer question I have already. Oh my god, of course, they already know that I've encountered a problem. How do I listen to our Twitch stream while not hearing our voices from the Twitch stream echo back into my headphones?
Well, first of all, you shouldn't be listening to the Twitch stream. You should, you don't need to be listening to it because you should be listening to me locally. But you want to hear, okay, I see what you mean. Why don't you just get some little, like, I don't know, little in-your-ear things? By the way, everyone, I have equipment for him. It's sitting here. I am not a fucking boomer, and it will be coming. Right. Yeah, the equipment's coming.
That's cool. I can listen to the...
You see what I mean?
I mean, I can, whatever. It's not a big deal. I can listen to 12 of my voices at once. I was born for that.
As long as you're not leaking it back to the audience through the headphones, you should be absolutely fine.
No, I don't think so.
You sound golden. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, you sound great too, man.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Everybody's beautiful.
Everyone's feeling good tonight. And they're tuned in to hear one thing. That's Big Daddy Jakey give them an intro for the first story, Bohemian Grove.
Absolutely. All right. So for you guys, I put together a couple little blurbs, I guess, that sort of try to capture where my mind was when I wrote some of this nonsense.
This is kind of like asking someone to read their own bio. It's kind of awkward. I think he wrote it based on a LinkedIn template.
I did. How did you know?
You're just a LinkedIn guy.
Okay, so here's what I wrote for our first story, Bohemian Grove. So one of the things that was so great about this story was that it combined, both fact and fiction. In my Bohemian Grove research, it turns out that Sean Connery actually did attend a handful of Bohemian Grove festivals, and it's also true that a young Alex Jones did secretly videotape one of the ceremonies. So it was fun to craft a narrative around that, and I also believe that this was the first QAnon Anonymous appearance of Sean Connery, who would later go on to be featured prominently in the Florida Flynn series. For anybody who's familiar with that masterpiece.
Wow, referring to his own stories as masterpieces on the first Twitch stream. Incredible. After he figures out how to use a mic and listen to them. I am a genius.
I mean, I know it's very, very Kanye of me. So when I write stuff like this, I always want there to be some kind of emotional hook that feels authentic to me as well as the listeners. So for this one, it was this idea that Sean Connery, stumbled into an awful situation and decided he wanted nothing to do with it. This is me at every single Hollywood party I've ever been to. Something always gets weird, and I'm desperate to pull the eject button and float safely back to the comfort of my own apartment. You'll tend to notice a lot of my main characters are surrounded by rich assholes who are condescending to them. So that's basically just my life out here. The chase sequence is definitely paying homage to various sequences in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, my favorite trilogy, my favorite of the trilogy, even though I recognize it's potentially the weakest film. Temple of Doom happens to be my favorite. So with no further ado, why don't we launch into the old story here?
Are you ready? Have you gotten your little headphones? Are you ready to listen to your story?
I'm good. I'm not a boomer.
A Bohemian Grove story
Yet.
with Jake Rockatansky, starring Sean Connery.
Connery looked at his watch. 8:15. His private plane had touched down on the tarmac moments ago. A car would be waiting to drive them to the final leg of the journey. The destination? Bohemian Grove. A festival for politicians and actors and artists. Connery had heard tales from his buddies about how amazing the... Oh, really?
Yeah. Sorry about that, everybody. I have no idea why it did that. Give me 1 second, and I'm going to put it back.
Connery
looked at his watch. 8:15. His private plane had touched down on the tarmac moments ago. A car would be waiting to drive them to the final leg of the journey. The destination? Bohemian Grove. A festival for politicians and actors and artists. Connery had heard tales from his buddies about how amazing the event was, and Clint Eastwood, an acquaintance of his, had been pressuring him immensely for the last 6 months about attending. The entrance fee was $25,000.
Eastwood also went to
Even
these
though the
parties.
money was no concern to Connery, $25K was a lot to spend on a weekend. He didn't even know who the main presenters were going to be. He sighed and warily gathered his belongings beneath the seat in front of him and strutted out onto the tarmac. The air was cool for May, as was often the case in Northern California. Connery lit up a cigarette and took a long, slow drag, taking in the hustle and bustle of the airport surrounding him. He noticed a large black SUV waiting on the tarmac. The door flung open, and there was Clint, a leathery smile on his face. He beckoned Connery over to the SUV. "You made it, you Scottish prick," Eastwood beamed. "Nice to see you too, Eastwood, you dry old bastard," Connery smirked. Eastwood opened a small fanny pack around his waist and handed Connery a bright pink wristband. "Make sure you put it on your left wrist," quipped Clint. "And by the way, I got us VIP." Eastwood seemed proud of himself. It was clear he was a Bohemian veteran. Stashed in the van were water bottles, pills of MDMA, and over 50 joints. Connery's eyes went wide. It had been ages since he'd filled his body with these types of narcotics, Panic attacks that had consumed his 30s and 40s made him wary of hard drugs. It was as if Clint read his mind. "And no pussing out. Trust me, we're gonna have the time of our lives." And they were off. The SUV skated out of the airport and onto a neighboring freeway, headed towards the Great Redwood Forest, where the festival was to take place. In the car, Eastwood was yammering on like an excited child, getting ready to go to Disneyland, unaccompanied by his parents. He was poring over a small printed schedule and excitedly trying to plan which events they would attend. "Okay, I'm thinking like from 7 to 9, we can hang out in the VIP section and get a couple of drinks in us." That sounded good to Connery. The only way he was ever going to get through this nightmare is if he was good and drunk. "Fine with me," Connery sighed. Eastwood continued. "All right, and then the cremation of care is going down at the Owl Shrine at 9:15. If we leave the VIP tent by 9 p.m., we should be able to get over there and get a decent spot." Connery nodded his head, feigning excitement. He never understood why people like Clint were so obsessive about scheduling when it came to these goddamn festivals. This was supposed to be fun. Besides, most of their lives as actors was centered around adhering to a strict schedule with places and times carefully laid out as they were ushered from event to event. He noticed Eastwood was now pulling ridiculous-looking robes and accessories out of his backpack. "No," Connery said calmly. Eastwood looked hurt. "Come on, Sean, everybody dresses up. It'll be fun." "No," Connery reiterated. "I'm perfectly happy with the outfit I've selected for myself. There'll be no need for flamboyant costumery." Eastwood pushed back. "So you're telling me you're happy with being the only guy there in street clothes? Don't you want to fit in with some of the younger members?" "Absolutely not," Connery exclaimed. Eastwood slumped back into the bucket seat of the SUV. "Fine, I just thought after I went through all the trouble to upgrade us to VIP that maybe you'd humor me and wear one of these kick-ass robes." Eastwood looked up at Connery with hopeful eyes. After about an hour, the SUV came to a stop in a dense area of the forest. Eastwood and Connery hopped out, both wearing elaborate robes bedazzled with all sorts of high-end costume jewelry. "I look like a goddamn fool," Connery lamented. His ill-fitting robe was riding up his ass, and he could already tell his greatest obstacle for the weekend would be managing the certain rash that would come upon...
How does a robe ride up an ass? It doesn't even have like a bottom to it.
Shut up.
It's just an open thing.
His ill-fitting robe was riding up his ass, and he could already tell his greatest obstacle for the weekend would be managing the certain rash that would be upon him any minute.
I love it. It's like, he has panic attacks and rashes. This, by the way, is not me. This is Sean Connery.
Yeah, this is not about me going to a music festival in any way, shape, or form. This is Sean Connery's story. I have sourced this.
He's like, the diamond porta potties, which is what they do when people are rich.
Connery glanced around and saw others arriving in the sleek, black SUVs, some with government plates. He raised his eyebrow at all of the musicians, politicians, and actors pouring out of their transportation vehicles and making their way towards the festival grounds. All the Bush boys were there. George Sr., George W., and Jeb were chatting excitedly and laughing as they headed into the forest. All were wearing similarly humiliating and potentially culturally offensive outfits.
To what culture? Druid culture?
Yeah.
High priests of Moloch, you know. My culture is not your costume.
All were wearing similarly humiliating and potentially culturally offensive outfits to the Druids. Connery felt like...
You fucked up the grammar.
Shut up. Connery felt like a sellout. Eastwood was already off. "All right," he said, holding a small printed booklet in his hand. "VIP is over that way. What are you waiting for? I want to have at least 3 beers before cremation of care starts. Let's go!" Eastwood sprinted into the forest, beckoning Connery to follow. Connery sighed and jogged after him. "I'm too old for this shit," he thought. Eastwood sprinted into the forest, beckoning Connery to follow. Connery sighed and jogged after him. "I'm too old for this shit," he thought. The VIP section was a sight to behold. Imagine the world's most prominent celebrities, absolutely shit-faced, bragging to one another about how they fucked over the working class in some shape or form. "Disgusting," Connery muttered to himself. His father was a factory worker. He had raised Sean to despise these people, and yet here he was, drinking their overpriced liquor and shaking hands and smiling. Jeb Bush wandered over to Connery and nearly spilled his beer on Connery's robe. "I had heard you might be coming," he yelled way too loudly and dangerously close to where Connery drew the line regarding personal space. "The Rock was fucking awesome movie, man," Jeb sneered. You know that they actually do have those gas rockets? I assumed it was made up, but my dad actually bought 100 of them from the Russians. Or maybe it was the Chinese, I don't know. He chugged the sloppy foam at the bottom of his plastic glass. He looked back at Connery, his eyes focusing in 2 different directions. You got any extra smokes on you? Connery placed a protective hand over the pack of Marlboros in his front pocket. Sorry, I bummed this from someone else. Jeb looked extremely disappointed and shuffled away into the crowd, asking others if they had a cigarette he could have. Like clockwork, Eastwood appeared back at Connery's side, double-fisting 2 large cups of beer. Okay, so here's the deal. Tonight, we'll do Creation of Care. Tomorrow night, we've got Little Friday Night at the Grove Stage. Or we could do the Low Jinks at the Field Circle. Do you have a preference? Not particularly, Connery said. There was a commotion as people began to stream out of the VIP area towards a clearing. Eastwood looked excited. Shit, it's starting. We gotta go. Before Connery could say a word, Eastwood grabbed his arm and the 2 of them jogged alongside Chris Angel and Jimmy Fallon over towards the main stage. There was a giant stone owl towering 50 feet in the air. Torches were lit. Everyone was in strange robes. Connery began to feel uneasy. He noticed long black curtains hanging from the redwood trees surrounding the owl. People were shuffling behind it, but Connery was so far away he couldn't really see what was going on. Damn, I wish we had gotten a better spot. Sorry. Eastwood looked disappointed. He craned his neck to see over a man in front of them, wearing a large goat's head. It was pretty annoying. A man wearing a large ornate headdress and long flowing robes was standing at the foot of the owl. He began to speak. The owl is within his leafy temple. Let all who are in the grove be reverent before him. This isn't Macbeth, scoffed Connery. He would be the one to know. Connery had played Macbeth shortly after getting out of the Royal Navy. This wasn't it. Eastwood put an excited hand on Connery's shoulder. Shh, this is the best part. Connery watched as a small person, perhaps a child, was brought in front of the owl. As far as Sean could tell, he was naked. Connery began to sweat. Something wasn't right. The child was stuffed behind the black curtains. There was a prolonged, intense silence. All of a sudden, screams were heard. Connery staggered back. Eastwood, what the hell was going on? Eastwood looked back at him, his eyes completely black. Others began to close in around Connery. You are witnessing the power of the almighty Moloch, they chanted in unison. Connery reached into his pocket and pulled out a small blade, which he kept on him at all times. Stay back, you devils! He slashed wildly at the air. Stay back! More were closing in on him. The leader of the ceremony must have keyed into his resistance. He shouted to the crowd, Is there a non-believer among us? Bring him to me! Connery stumbled back. The crowd was closing in. All 3 bushmen were staggering towards him, eyes black and teeth bared. Connery had to get out of there. He took off through the woods, glancing over his shoulders to see if they were following him. In his haste, he ran head first into a middle-aged man with thinning hair. The man was holding a camcorder. Stay back! Connery yelled, brandishing the knife. Easy there, buddy. Easy there. Now, wait a minute. You're not one of them, are you? Who the hell are you? Connery shouted. My name is Alex Jones. I'm a journalist. Infowars.com. Connery had in fact heard of him, a right-wing rag website famous for railing against unproven conspiracies. But right now, Alex Jones was Connery's only hope. The light of burning torches illuminated the small area of the woods where Jones and Connery huddled. Jones looked up, terrified. A group of men in robes, holding torches, were bounding through the woods in their direction. Run, Jones said. Now! Connery and Jones took off through the woods. Jones shouted as they ran. Started in the 1870s, was billed as an artist retreat, but I've always suspected it was something much more sinister. Guess I was right. Jones produced a small pistol from his waistband, cocked the hammer, and fired 3 shots into the dark forest at their pursuers. Bow! 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 Connery picked up the pace. We're almost at the entrance, Jones screamed. Sure enough, they emerged from the forest into a waiting caravan of SUVs, the same ones that had dropped them off hours ago. One lone driver stood against one of the vans. Upon seeing the 2 men emerge from the forest, he drew his weapon and trained it at the 2 men. Jones seemed frozen. Thinking quickly, Connery gently grabbed Jones' firearm and trained it at the driver. Here's how this is going to go. You're going to drop your weapon and give us the keys to that SUV. If you don't, you will die today. The man was sweating. He shakily kept his gun trained on Jones and Connery, unsure whether to pull the trigger. Without warning, he fired a shot, blam, narrowly missing Connery and ricocheting off a nearby redwood. Big mistake. Connery unloaded the full clip into the man's chest. Blam, 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 blam! And he slumped against the side of the SUV. A streak of blood smeared down the car's passenger side. Connery and Jones stood there for a moment. Then Connery spoke. Well, what are you waiting for? We've got a plane to catch. Jones sprung into action, grabbing the keys out of the dead man's pockets. They hopped into the SUV. Jones slammed the key in the ignition, and the engine roared to life. Boy, thank God in heaven that you don't subscribe to this Satanism like the rest of Hollywood. I didn't think there were any good people left. Jones shifted the SUV into gear. Connery nodded his head gravely. It's true. I am the last one. The SUV peeled off down the dirt road, dust flying through the wind as the truck's tires gripped the old country road. A year later, Sean Connery retired from acting.
All right, Jake.
Wow, I totally forgot that I ended on a Dragonheart reference, which is tight.
Yeah. This is also like a throwback to when I did less sound effects on the stories and stuff. It feels a lot more bare than some of my later work.
Yeah, it's amazing. This was when we were first really starting to even play with the idea of like Foley sound like in these stories.
I remember thinking it was a big deal that I was using like actual like satanic like ritual voices and stuff like that in the background, and that I also had like birds chirping outside to make sure you knew it was a forest, you know. This was a big deal for me at that time, and now I'm being tasked to do like, Michael Bay level stuff for you.
Yeah, I may or may not have explained Bohemian Grove to an elderly couple at the Tampa Bay Q rally.
This is also Mathilde's favorite story because of the "Stay back, you devils." She cannot.
Stay back, you devils.
She
Yeah, I
loves
guess
that line.
I was thinking maybe that my impression has gotten worse, but I agree with who was it? Silver Star, who said that it's become more caricature, which makes sense in the extended QAnon universe, because I'm not actually doing Sean Connery for the Florida Flynn stories. I'm doing Sean Connery playing the character of Florida Flynn Sr.
Of course, yeah, but also incapable of doing any acting, so just sounding the same essentially. But
yeah,
cheaper.
basically just stuffed into a tweed suit and given a leather briefcase and just kind of shoved out onto set. Hope he hits his mark.
Yeah, I really do love this story. And next up we have a story that was not so long ago aired on an episode about Moloch. Do you want to lead us in here?
Yeah, absolutely. What's up, by the way, Owen? Yes, Moloch. Okay, so.
Wait a second. Weren't we going to do a questions and answers? Does anyone have any questions?
Oh yeah. Does anybody have
for
any
Jakey before we move to the next one?
My fucking my shit.
He's having a meltdown. Questions about my shit.
Phil Schneider, what do you want to know? I would listen to his. I saw you talking about that earlier, Yo-Yo Ma. I would listen to his Dulce, New Mexico lecture. It's about an hour long. You can find it on YouTube. The quality's shit. But if you sort of treat it as a podcast and just listen to it, it actually can be quite interesting. What's your trees number thing?
How long have you been doing the impressions? That's a good question. I don't even know that.
Oh, I don't even know either, really. I think I started doing the Sean Connery impression. Actually, I know for a fact the Sean Connery impression started when, this is how old I am, Dragonheart came out into theater. And I remember seeing the commercials over and over and over again. And one thing that we did, because there was no internet at this time, the memes were essentially just created from like commercials and lines from movies and shit. So everybody like my age would walk around going like, "I am the last one," and then that sort of is how the Connery. And I usually have to say "I am the last one" a couple times to sort of like work into the impression, Favorite person to do an impression of? Probably like I have a Canadian buddy who is just like Ricky from Trailer Park Boys, and he's really hilarious. And I like to do an impression of him to my other friends and to his face. Favorite story so far? I mean, the one I think I laughed the most at, the one that stands out immediately is when Stephen Hawking goes to Epstein Island, because I was sort of appalled at my own brain that I had something like that in me. So I remember laughing really hard during that. Also anytime that there's a Bill Clinton quote, for some reason I find his like I find his character is always really funny. Usually because he's covered in molasses or trying to cover me in molasses or something like that.
Yes, I do.
Have I
like
ever
that.
taken acting classes? Yes, I've taken lots of acting classes. I was an actor back in the day.
All right, let's move on.
All right, let's do it.
Moloch, you got some little prep intro for us here prepped.
Moloch. Now, here we have a clear example of me sort of flexing all of the horror tropes. I tried to write this story in sort of the style of like your modern ghost tale, with basically your James Wan sort of ghost movie. I really think he sort of reinvented the haunted house movie with the Conjuring series, which I quite like. But it's all the same beats. You got young family, moves into a house, young daughter, father completely oblivious, gone all the time, like working, driving the truck, always the same shit. The mother slowly goes mad as she unravels the secrets deep within the house. And since our format has no visuals, you can't really sort of write your standard jump scares that you find in a lot of horror movies now. So I tried to shy away from that, and I really tried to lean into what the kids call dread horror now, which is like stuff like Hereditary or Get Out, where the horror actually comes from the buildup and anticipation of seeing something as opposed to seeing it outright. A really good example of that, actually, that works incredibly well is Netflix's Haunting of Hill House, the most recent series that they did. And they're about to drop season 2 soon, I believe.
No, I'm not allowed to advertise for Netflix.
Why? Why not? It's a good show. I liked it.
Okay, well, you're not allowed to say Netflix. You have to go.
Okay.
You have to go beep flicks.
Oh, okay. Sorry. But anyways, yeah. If you end up watching that show on that platform, you'll notice that the director and writer, a lot of the horror comes from shit that you never ever see. There's never ever a ghost. It's just like they lead you to believe that they're going to show you one. So anyways, I try to sort of like bite that style for something like this. And oddly enough, in the story, Hillary is the hero. She's sort of left alone by an oblivious husband in an old decaying house, just having left her entire previous life behind. So, it's classic horror setting, and basically plays out as such, as she digs deeper, and even, of course, enlists the help of her, too mature for her age daughter, which is like another classic trope. But it just so happens that the Clinton family sort of fits into that without me having to really like adjust anything. So it worked.
I love it.
Thematically, I was also sort of trying to touch on like, the absolute corruption of power. It's played as a joke in the story, but the idea of the Clintons being good people before reaching the White House, is sort of a nod to how positions of power can blacken even the purest of hearts. So very deep, very unique theme that you don't find in any other stories.
Yeah, good job.
Ultimately, I'm just like a ripoff king. Ultimately, but that's what Moloch represents. And despite Hillary's heroism, and you'll see there's a heavy homage to Ripley and Aliens when Hillary goes down into the basement, to rescue her daughter from like essentially, my version of like the Queen. She's of course no match for the evil that is soaked into the walls of the White House for centuries. So yeah, that's sort of the lead up.
Wonderful
Julian,
stuff. Let's go.
take it away.
And then the guy's name is Prentice Boxham.
Prentice Boxham.
Only rich dumbasses would come up with a name like that. Like there's no human being.
Satirical.
It does. I mean, it is all satirical in a way, but then it's also like
This is 100%
satire.
not.
Circles that compares logos like
Satan,
this one.
hail Satan.
Sorry.
Yeah, the text.
Things
Gotta
that are being
stress.
said on this podcast. The cap.
Cure. NSA.
He's
They
gross.
Yeah,
do.
they want their own elite
You know
club.
what?
Connery, we can hang out in the VIP.
Okay, thank you.
Lawn, and you're part of some lawn.
Connery.
Connery
Yeah, the
looked at his
Stephen Hawking
watch.
one was very early on. It was like I think
Domesticating
one of the first
monkeys.
stories
Whatever.
Drawing
All
symbols
right.
on rocks.
We're launching into
Yeah.
it.
Leaving them around to creep the next person out. I don't know. To play some lawn bowling.
Yeah. Pee on a tree.
Just piss right on a tree.
We're going to de-radicalize these people with lawn bowling and piss.
A Bohemian Grove Story with Jake Rockatansky, starring Sean Connery.
Connery looked at his watch. 8:15. His private plane had touched down on the tarmac moments ago. A car would be waiting to drive them to the final leg of the journey. The destination? Bohemian Grove. A festival for politicians and actors and artists. Connery had heard tales from his buddies about how amazing the event was, and Clint Eastwood, an acquaintance of his, had been pressuring him immensely for the last 6 months about attending. The entrance fee was $25,000. Even though the money was no concern to Connery, $25K was a lot to spend on a weekend. He didn't even know who the main presenters were going to be. He sighed and warily gathered his belongings beneath the seat in front of him and strutted out onto the tarmac. The air was cool for May, as was often the case in Northern California. Connery lit up a cigarette and took a long, slow drag, taking in the hustle and bustle of the airport surrounding him. He noticed a large, priced just church.
Sure, some light fare.
I mean, this is a story of a young family and moving into a new house, and I don't know. I think it's a nice little slice of life, and I really hope you guys like it.
Move-in day.
Come on, Chelsea. Last one to put their box in their bedroom's a rotten egg. The sounds of excited footsteps pittered across the old wood floors. Hillary plunked a box down on the grand kitchen counter and wiped the sweat from her forehead, grinning ear to ear. She couldn't believe it. After everything her and Bill, and Chelsea for that matter, had been through, they had finally made it. The White House. It was almost too surreal. Hillary and her husband had been dreaming about this day for what felt like decades, and yet it had all become theirs so quickly. Or at least it felt that way, as she stood watching Chelsea trample up the old staircase, clutching a worn cardboard box overflowing with stuffed animals and school notebooks. I wonder if Lincoln ever leaned on this very counter, dissecting the evils of slavery and how to stop it, Hillary thought, resting her elbows on the counter and feeling a deep sense of love and admiration for African Americans. I can't believe you guys got most of the boxes already. I feel like this is gonna be his lines always are gonna be a fucking problem for me. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah.
I can't believe you guys got most of the boxes already. I feel like a toad. Bill sauntered into the room, chuckling to himself. He took pause to notice his strong wife, her sleeves rolled up and sporting a broken-in pair of Levi's jeans. What? Hillary asked playfully. Bill was always handsome. But now that he was the President of the United States, there was something extra about him. He pulled her in for a quick, warm embrace. You're the only woman I want to look at for the rest of my life. The words nearly took her breath away, but only because she knew Bill meant it. In the decades they'd been together, he had never so much as even glanced at another woman. Her friends were always teasing her that she'd married some goody-two-shoes church boy. They weren't wrong. Bill gave her a final squeeze and straightened his tie. I gotta go give a press conference on the lawn. Are you two gonna be all right by yourselves? Hillary joked with him. Well, I'm not so sure. It's an old house. Bill cocked his eyebrows. You don't think it's haunted, do you? Hillary took a step back and rested her elbows behind her on the kitchen counter once again, only with the ghosts of liberty and equality. She held a serious look for a second, before the two of them cracked and smiled and laughed together. Today was a good day, Hillary said. She gave Bill one last squeeze before he exited through the kitchen door and disappeared. Hillary stood alone in the kitchen for a moment, taking it all in. Mom! Chelsea's voice rang through the empty mansion. Hillary instinctively took off running towards the sound of her daughter's voice. She sprinted down a long hallway, and as she turned the corner, she saw Chelsea, standing about 100 feet away, frozen, looking at something just out of Hillary's line of sight. Hillary, concerned, slowed a bit, and continued to walk briskly towards Chelsea, closer and closer. When she was within feet of Chelsea, she saw it. Socks the cat was urinating onto an ornate, priceless carpet in the center of the Jefferson living room. Both Chelsea and Hillary stood frozen, watching in horror. Socks finished his business, licked his paws, and bounded off into the depths of the house. There was a thick silence. Hillary and Chelsea burst out laughing. "I'll get the spray," Chelsea quipped. She took off towards the kitchen before pausing and turning back towards her mom. "Where is the spray?" Hillary thought for a second. "I have no idea." The two sat scrubbing the expensive carpet. Great, Hillary thought. Here have walked all the greats. Lincoln, Kennedy, FDR. And here I am, my first day on the job, and my cat pees on it. "It's not like him." "What?" Hillary said, snapping to. "He doesn't have accidents. Socks. He didn't have one back at home except when he was little." Chelsea seemed a bit concerned. "Oh, don't worry, honey. I'm sure he's just nervous," Hillary said, putting her arm gently around Chelsea's shoulder. "It's a new house." Chelsea nodded. "It's a big new house." The two sat cross-legged on the floor, staring at the damp spot on the carpet. Slam! The sound of a door banging shut echoed from somewhere within the house. The noise startled both Hillary and Chelsea. They squeezed each other a little tighter. Slowly, they picked themselves up off the floor and cautiously made their way through the hallways, looking for the source of the sound. "We have to make sure Socks isn't trapped," Chelsea yelled, taking off up one of the staircases. "I'll search upstairs." Hillary combed through the lower floor. She lingered in one of the many libraries. She noticed a small notebook was laying on the blue carpet. She glanced up and saw an empty sliver in one of the cases from which it must have fallen. She carefully picked the book up and began to comb through the pages. It was a diary of some sort. Hillary read aloud. "March 11th, 1933. As I wander these sacred grounds, I picture a world where all human beings, not just men, are created equal. The first week in this magnificent palace of freedom has humbled me considerably. Within these walls, I hope to unite the world at large. Why fight when we can care for one another? Questions like these have moved me to begin to draft what I believe will be wildly progressive policies. Policies that aren't rife with loopholes, in the hopes that the most fortunate of us will willingly support the less. Today was a good day. Signed, FDR." A single tear rolled down Hillary's cheek. It was as if she was reading her own diary. She skimmed a couple of entries ahead, and as she read aloud, Hillary's expression seemed to shift to one of horror. "April 2nd, 1933. Something wicked within me grows. Faint at first, but stronger every day. I am filled with wild paranoia. Our enemies grow strong. With the discovery of nuclear fission, my fears increase. I worry of a weapon capable of crippling our nation with a single blow. We must be prepared. Prepared to defend ourselves. Prepared to retaliate. Prepared to strike first. Without warning, Hillary clasped the diary closed and quickly put it down. She stared at it for a beat as it sat on the desk, glaring back at her. "Mom!" Hillary jumped about 5 feet in the air. "What is it?" she called out. "You should come see this!" Chelsea's tiny voice echoed from somewhere within the house. Hillary took one last look at the journal, then exited from the downstairs library and joined Chelsea in an adjacent hallway. She was standing in front of a wooden door at the end of a corridor. "Look," Chelsea pointed to a small golden plaque next to the door. "For no reason should this door be opened at any time. There is an evil here. It lives in the basement. Signed, George H.W. Bush." Chelsea looked over at her mother, her eyes wide. "Cool!" Hillary put her hand over her head. She couldn't help but smile. Chelsea was a good kid, smart and brave. Hillary knew that one day, Chelsea, like her parents, would become an amazing lawyer or politician, maybe even president. Hillary slowly placed her hand on the doorknob and jiggled the handle. "Locked." She smiled at Chelsea, a little relieved. They both were. When they returned to the kitchen, Bill was just getting home. A swamp of Secret Service agents flooded into the kitchen and then seemingly vanished into thin air. Bill looked energized. "Well, don't you two look white as a hammock in July? What have you been getting into?" Hillary looked down, a little embarrassed. She had let herself get caught up in the fright. Chelsea blurted out, "Socks peed on the carpet." "Chelsea!" Hillary crowed. She glanced back at Bill. It's true. Socks peed on Mary Todd Lincoln's rug. She kissed Bill on the cheek. How was the press conference? Bill lit up. Fantastic. I started laying the groundwork to announce the private prison ban. I talked about lighter sentences and community programs for nonviolent drug-related crimes. I mean, they seemed to respond really well. Chelsea spoke up again. We also found a scary door. It said that there's evil inside. Bill glanced over at Hillary, who reluctantly nodded sheepishly. Well, okay, then show me. The three stood in front of the door, Bill tracing his fingers around the edge of the doorway. It's locked up tight, all right. And then he joked, maybe that's where they keep the nuclear warheads. Everyone laughed nervously. Come on, I'm beat. We can check it out in the morning. There's got to be some sort of presidential key around here somewhere. Later that night, all three slept lightly. New beds in a new house made way for twisted sheets and dreams as the three tossed and turned throughout the cold winter night. Hillary was in the thrall of a vivid dream. She was running for president. This was a recurring dream, but this time she found herself doing press inside of a radio station. She was surrounded by hip, futuristic-looking African Americans. A woman was asking her what's something she always carries with her. Without thinking, Hillary felt the words, hot sauce, leaving her lips. The dream spiraled into a nightmare as she watched the stunned looks on each of the radio hosts' faces. She tried to recover, but it was no use. She kept on saying completely racist things. This wasn't her, she thought. She would never try to breathlessly pander like that. She had never needed to. Hillary bolted upright in bed as she clutched at her chest, catching her breath. She glanced around the room. Bill slept soundly, snoring gently. Hillary laid her head back down on the pillow. Both Hillary and Bill bolted out of their bed. They bounded towards their bedroom door, out into the hallway, and towards Chelsea's room. As they burst through the door, they find a terrified Chelsea clutching a pillow to her chest, staring into the dark corner of her room. As Bill and Hillary peer into the door, they see two glowing eyes deep within the dark corner. A voice begins to speak.
I am but a messenger, a vessel by which the word of Moloch shall travel. His darkness is merciful. Relinquish your souls unto him.
The figure stepped out from the shadows. Bill recognized him immediately. It was George Washington. His face looked sullen, his eyes glowing a dull blue. Bill didn't give a fuck who he was. He was in his daughter's room at 3 a.m. Mayday! Mayday! Bill yelled, throwing himself in front of his family, waiting for the Secret Service to burst into the room. Instead, they filed in slowly, one by one, their eyes black as oil. The Clinton family looked on in horror as they took hold of each family member. Chelsea cried as she watched her mother and father struggle against the once friendly guard's vice grip. They were dragged through the house, down the stairs. They did not stop until all three were propped up in front of the locked door leading to the basement. It creaked open slowly in front of them, leading to a long dark staircase into the depths of the old house. They kicked and screamed as they were dragged down the basement steps and brought into a small, desolate throne room. Standing before them were the first 10 presidents: Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, every single one. They looked human. Gray, maybe, sick, their eyes sunken deep into their decaying foreheads, but alive. How could this be? Gawked Bill. Washington spoke up.
This is how it has been for centuries, I'm afraid. These United States, they belong to us.
Bill wiped his eyes. Hillary struggled to find her voice. But how are you alive? George Washington straightened up. He rotated his torso, gesturing behind him.
Because we belong to him.
Something leaned forward from the shadows. A large man with the head of a calf, its giant horns pointed towards the ceiling.
He is Moloch, king of this realm, ruler of this house.
All the presidents dropped to their knees.
It is only because of his mercy that we are allowed to reign over this great nation.
And let me guess, you want me to do your bidding. Well, what if I say no? George Washington seemed to almost float towards Bill, getting closer and closer. He reached out his hand and placed it gently on Bill's shoulder. In an instant, his brain exploded with the entire plot to assassinate JFK. He sees the shooting from another angle. an unmistakable one. The presidents close in, dragging a weak Bill to the altar of Moloch. The creature bends down and begins to feed on Bill Clinton's soul. Chelsea sobs. Hillary, gathering her last bit of strength, pulls herself to her feet. Wait a minute! The creature seems intrigued. How dare this mortal woman raise her voice to him? You can have us, but let my daughter go. She's innocent. Take us. Chelsea cries harder. Mom, no! The creature shoves Bill aside. He clutches his head, writhing in pain.
And so it is written, the child will be spared. Great is the mercy of Moloch! But hear thee this, mortals. On this day of generosity, the child shall not follow in the footsteps of thy mother and thy father. Thou must choose a humble life, and shall not seek to eat at the table of gods and beasts.
Chelsea was dragged away, up the basement steps, calling for her parents. And then, they were alone, with the evil that plagued this cursed house. Hillary was brought before the Dark Lord. Tell me one thing, she said bravely. Why? Why even have a figurehead at all? Why not just enslave the people with your powers? Moloch clicked his tongue and leaned in close. His breath reeked of rotten fish.
23 years from now, a prophet will come, a soldier of God, sent to destroy us and reclaim the presidency of these United States. In order to defeat him, we have worked for centuries to set the ultimate trap in which you and your husband will play an important role. Join me, and I can assure you, instead of looking at one president, I'll be looking at two.
Hillary glanced at Bill. He had given up, bowing to the abomination in the throne in front of them. With the last bit of strength, she spit on the ground in front of her. Fuck you! Moloch scowled. He let out a terrifying cry, pouncing on Hillary as she felt the room swirling around her. Then, blackness.
So we've been doing with all the candidates word association before we go. Jeb Bush.
Loser.
Okay. Marco Rubio.
Confused.
Hillary Clinton.
She went to your wedding, right?
Wow.
She did. In a certain way, evil. In a certain way, evil.
That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed that light
God.
little...
So that was Jake in the past saying, I hope you guys enjoy. And now that Jake in the present, what do you want to say to the beautiful audience waiting for your commentary?
I say I know you enjoyed, because that story was dope, man. All the production value and stuff. Some of these, I don't know if people know, but I don't listen to all the episodes all the way through sometimes. So some of this shit I'm hearing for the first time, and it's amazing.
Amazing. That's how much he values all this work. Well, at least it serves you out there. But Jake doesn't have the attention span for our podcast, so to make it, yes. To listen to it, no. It's a bizarre existential.
It's weird. It's like once it's been recorded and like put into the ether, I'm just sort of out of my system. I sort of lose sight of it.
No, Jake listens. Like, he's heard a few. Like, he's made comments. Don't say, "Oh my God, Jake doesn't listen."
No, I do.
He does. He's just on a little
Maybe
on and
just
off.
not always to my own shit. Not always to my own shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
And that's
like
okay.
Kylo Ren. Like Kylo Ren doesn't like to watch his performances.
As long as he does his homework some of the time, we allow him to stay on the podcast. So next up, we have an even more production-heavy one. Have you ever heard the Prince Andrew story then, Jake, since you don't hear any of them?
I'm not sure, but I had a dream the other night, dude, that you did fire me from the podcast. So clearly my subconscious is worried.
How could I
about it.
fire you from a company that we are literally own 3 ways?
I have no idea.
It's literally legally impossible. If you get Travis on your side, you could fire me.
Man, don't give me any ideas.
Yeah.
Night Silver Star.
Would you fire me? I would fire me.
I wouldn't fire me.
I would fire me right now. Well, next up we have, like I said, the Epstein story, I think, with Prince Andrew, which has a lot of cool techno. I love the production on this one. I loved doing it just because the genres I was using in this one, a kind of like electronics version of like trap, and the other track, which is just straight up techno. Both are like, from Nick Senna and Pontus Berg. And I just love using them because they're my favorite music genres. That's all. That's all. That's all I'll ever say.
Yeah. For this one, the sort of recall that I wrote on it after previewing it again is I wrote, admittedly, this story is incredibly stupid.
Wow.
Every now and again. Okay, so yeah, it's every now and again, Julie and I come up with like essentially one joke that both of us thinks is like lol funny, and then I bludgeon it to death over the course of 10 to 15 minute story. In this case, the joke is that Prince Andrew says he'd rather not do a particular drug / heinous act, and before the words can leave his mouth, he's engaging in the most extreme version of whatever he was trying to say no to.
Similarly to the awful things he's done in real life, which we supposedly didn't want to deal with head on, right? We were like, let's not make this crass.
Yeah.
The problem is Jake does so he chooses the structure to not make it crass, and then he puts both his feet in the dog shit in the middle of the story by literally saying, didn't you say the word rape or something? Like, it's an awful, obviously.
Yeah, it's awful.
It's awful. I later thought about putting a trigger warning in there. I don't think I did, but fuck, I probably should have.
We might have bleeped it.
No, I didn't bleep it. I don't bleep anything in your stories.
But well, we'll see.
I only bleep things where I say things that whatever might get me in trouble.
Yeah, and we don't have a bleep button on Twitch, Julian. So. Better be careful.
Make sure you have that bleep button in your mind so that you don't hear any of the gamer words, listeners.
I think what happens is I'll take the serious thing and we'll find like a funny way to sort of present it in a way that like doesn't glorify like the horrible things that these guys have done, but in the same breath, like I don't want them off the hook either. So like once you find the sort of like funny way to present it, like it feels like the gore is just like in support of like your funny angle. I don't know. It's a weird balance. I don't know if we hit it right, but
is that it? I don't know if you've read us this intro. You have quite a big intro here. Give it to us.
No, I was basically saying, this is like ripped straight from the pages of like a Will Forte or like Tim and Eric style playbook. But
don't just put a slash and put Will Forte next to Tim and Eric, the former whatever, and the latter geniuses.
I think I had just seen a tweet where Tim was talking about MacGruber, and I was just like, oh man, I love that those guys like each other's shit.
Copy that.
On a personal note, the beginning of this story borrows heavily from College Antics with a friend of mine, a friend that I used to have whose name was Tommy, who was constantly getting into trouble. And I was sort of like along for the ride. And he had this thick Northern California accent. And it wasn't like out of the ordinary for him to get into fist fights with like other friends of mine, like mere seconds after introducing him. He was a wild card that wanted to know, he was one of those guys that like wanted to do three things, like fight, fuck, or like feast. And if he couldn't get one, he would usually settle for the other two. Mm-hmm. And me being a particularly timid, like law-abiding boy, I found his friendship fascinating. And we remained good friends all through college and shortly after.
He's your Epstein?
Yeah, he's like kind of like my end. So I was trying to imagine
sure.
like what.
Yeah, I'm sure. I hope he hears this out there and just knows that's what.
Somehow he's like, oh man, I
heard you called me Epstein, bro.
Dude, I've been meaning to talk to Jake. I love his show. Oh, they got a new Twitch stream.
Oh, and he called me Epstein live.
No, but he was. I tried to think of like somebody that I could model it after, because characters are always better when you model them after somebody you know, because you have a more complete picture. Otherwise, everybody sounds like you know, which is boring for a story.
Absolutely.
Also, I would like to tell the listeners / viewers, this particular story follows a structure that I rely sort of heavily on, and I would call it like the John Hughes template, where a regular night out sort of gets weirder and weirder until you're like in full-on science fiction, fantasy, like horror territory. It works perfectly for shit like this. Also, the twist that Andrew ends up at the same underground party that we saw his mother leave for at the beginning of the story is a nice little callback, or I believe it's called circular storytelling, but I'm not sure, so don't fact check me on that.
No one would ever dare do that.
Yeah, so yeah, that's basically it. I think that's a good enough blurb.
Beautiful. Well, let's get started, my friend.
Let's do it.
It's Andrew's Wild Night.
Right, is that what we're doing?
Yep.
Oh
Yeah.
boy, here we go.
That's what we're doing, Jake.
Oh
Go
boy,
for
did
it.
I write this? I
No,
hope not.
I don't think so.
Double kill.
The words flashed across the screen in large, gratuitous letters. Andrew's eyes squinted. He leaned forward in his easy chair that was made of solid gold. "Come on, you prat!" Andrew squeaked through his teeth, his grip so tight on the controller you could almost hear the plastic buckle and snap. Without warning, the giant 40-foot screen flashed red, and Andrew watched as his tiny red space marine ragdolled off into eternity. A proud but frail voice called from beyond the gilded double doors.
"Andrew, we're going to be late to the ball. I've left you £100 on the kitchen counter for pizza."
"Okay, Mom," Andrew called over his shoulder, not taking his eyes off the screen. Fucking beautiful. A night home alone. Just Andrew, his small fluffy dog, approximately $1.4 billion worth of classical art, and a whole backlog of Xbox games he'd been dying to dig into. He hadn't even gotten to the PvP portion of the Division 2. A real shame. Andrew perused his library. DayZ? Nah, too lonely, he thought. Outer Worlds? That was supposed to be really good. Nah, no third person. Andrew scoffed as he scrolled through what seemed like an endless list of games limited to 2 or 3 genres. Despite the brightly colored tiles with enticing artwork, Andrew couldn't help but feel a sense of profound emptiness as he scrolled through his catalog. Bzzz. His phone vibrated across a nearby priceless bust. Andrew dove for it. Anything to distract him from the realization he had sunk likely thousands of dollars into games he would never finish. He picked up the phone.
"Yo, what are you fucking doing tonight?"
Andrew recognized the voice immediately. "Jeff, what's up, mate?"
"Dude, fucking nothing. What are you doing?"
Not too much, mate. Just here at the palace, playing some video games and stuff. Why? What you got?"
"Apparently there's this fucking party at the Eiffel Tower. Could be chill. Could fucking blow. I don't know. I'm bored."
Andrew looked at himself. He was wearing sweatpants and a purple Gap sweater. No condition for going out. Plus, tonight was an Andrew night. Vids, pizza, and, if he was being honest with himself, some porn on his phone, a couple inches away from his face as he brought himself to orgasm in a dark room, alone.
Just absolutely unnecessary.
"No, man. I would, but I probably should stay home tonight. You know, gotta hold down the fort with Mum at the gala and all. I'll catch you later, though, man. Have fun," Andrew said as he threw on some pants and a button-down and told Jeff he'd be downstairs in 15 minutes. He didn't really want to go out. It wasn't his style. On a Tuesday night, to go rage at some touristy club in a secret compartment within the Eiffel Tower. In fact, in his mind, he wasn't really going at all. That was it, he thought. He was just pretending to go out. It's what people did. Andrew stood nervously on the private roundabout, waiting for Jeff to pick him up. Jeff was a loose cannon. One minute, they'd be laughing and telling stories. The next minute, Jeff would be out cold on the floor, having been knocked out for saying something totally offensive to either a complete stranger or even a close friend. Jeff had a habit of getting knocked out. A lot. After a couple minutes, Andrew saw the headlights reflecting off the long, perfectly manicured driveway. A white Bentley pulled to a stop in front of them, and the back door swung open, revealing Jeffrey Epstein in a crisp white button-down with a 49ers cap turned backwards on his head. "What's up, you fucking bitch?" Epstein laughed and beckoned for Andrew to join him in the back of the car. Andrew, a little hesitant, leaped into the Bentley and asked the driver to insert an auxiliary cable he had brought with him. As the tunes blared, Epstein shouted towards the driver, "To the Eiffel Tower!" Andrew was used to it. This was how transportation for rich people worked. Hop in a car, yell a destination, and a network of people will accept middle-class salaries to make it happen for you. Andrew felt ashamed as he commented on the stench of the driver's unwashed uniform as he and Epstein cackled to one another. After a couple minutes, Epstein gave Andrew a cheeky look before producing a bag of marijuana from his jacket pocket. "You want to smoke this chronic?" Andrew felt his heart skip a beat. If there was one thing he knew to be true about himself, it was that he, Prince Andrew, never did drugs. He thought back to the police officers that had come into his school when he was just a lad and taught him about where his life could end up if he chose a path of drugs. No thanks," Andrew said as he extracted the oily concentrate from the marijuana and freebased it out of a small glass bubbler using a blowtorch. The wheels of a sleek private jet skidded off the runway. Andrew watched, eyes wide, as the pulsing city, literally breathing with life, got smaller and smaller beneath them. Epstein was trying to scratch a white crusty substance off the leg of his pants. The sound of his nails scratching against the rough denim echoed deep into Prince Andrew's ears. He was losing it. He should have never taken a dab that big. Who was he trying to impress? Some rich punk like Epstein? He was a prince, for goodness sakes. A fucking prince! In his mind, he wasn't even here. He was home alone, munching on pizza, and finally getting some decent gear in Neverwinter. "That's where I am," he said out loud as he sprinkled LSD into each one of his eyes and removed his shirt. Andrew peered into the fourth dimension as the landscape crawled by his motionless airship.
Dude, you are so fucking faded.
He could barely make out Epstein's outline. His vision seemed to flex and blur. He was falling backwards into infinity.
"Here, take this."
The silhouette he was fairly certain was Epstein pushed a small pile of white powder towards his nose. No, stay back," Andrew yelled. The words came pouring out of him. "I've had enough. This is not who I am. I am not some sort of ne'er-do-well hell-bent on destroying my temple with the devil's gunpowder, or anything else for that matter," Andrew declared as he licked his finger, dipped it in the powder, and inserted it directly up his asshole. His eyes mutated into two large dinner plates, and a pained expression gripped his face. The next thing he knew, he was walking into a secret elevator at the base of the Eiffel Tower, feeling fresh as fuck. Prince Andrew's swag was on 100,000 million. The cocaine was 100% doing its thing. And he was also adamant that he was not fucked up in the slightest, and was, in fact, still totally sober, sitting at home playing Fable 3. He was in his 50s after all. He barely ever drank. He remembered about himself as he leered at a bartender, pouring a gin and tonic down his throat. He glanced around the room, searching for Epstein. Despite Epstein's ability to manipulate Andrew into doing drugs and other things he never would do otherwise, Andrew considered him to be one of his best friends and would do anything he could to protect him, alive or dead. The mood of the party had begun to shift. Out of the corner of his eye, Prince Andrew could have sworn he saw what looked like a forked tongue flicking in and out of some sweaty partygoer. Andrew was dry as a bone. After a military accident had rendered his glands useless, Andrew enjoyed the comforts of a perspirationless body. He casually walked up to a young woman who couldn't have been older than 18 and confidently blurted out, "I don't even drink, really. I don't like to party at all, and I'm certainly only interested in women my own age." He laughed, taking the girl's cell phone out of her purse and adding his number to her contacts. Just then, Epstein appeared with shaving cream smeared all over his face. He was wearing a Grande Armée uniform and reeked of booze and dope.
"Dude, fucking, we should go to this after party."
"What after party?" Prince Andrew yelled, exasperated.
"Oh no, dude. People are saying there's an after party."
Prince Andrew crossed his arms firmly across his chest. "No, I'm sorry, but no, I want to go home. I've more than met you halfway tonight. A prince shouldn't be associated with such late-night tomfoolery. I don't even drink." Epstein sighed. He hung his head and stuffed his hands into the pockets of his jacket.
"Dude, are you really fucking telling me that you, the Prince of fucking Wales or whatever, don't want to come to a party in the fucking catacombs with a convicted sexual predator like me? It's fucking unbelievable, dude."
Andrew hung his head. He knew Epstein was right. A man in the public eye, royalty, such as he, had every right to do whatever he pleased and suffer not one single consequence to show for it. He decided tonight he would take a break from his mild-mannered, respectable lifestyle and really cut a rug with his pedophile pal. Just this once, Andrew winked and remembered the 3 other times this past month he and Epstein had raped underage girls.
Oh, God. Holy shit.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
I'm sorry. Oh boy, I'm sorry, and it gets worse. I'm so sorry to everybody. My mom, my dad, my new nephew. Sorry. The torch burned bright as Prince Andrew and his friend Jeff made their way through the dark catacomb corridors. Andrew brushed aside large globs of cobwebs, and the two descended further and further into the darkness. Jeff was looking at his phone, an annoyed expression on his face. Dude, they said it would be right here. All of a sudden, a strange chanting startled the two men.
Mors ultima linea rerum est. Mors ultima linea rerum est. Mors ultima linea rerum est.
Jeff's eyes lit up. He took off towards the sound of the chanting voices. Prince Andrew rolled his eyes, chuckled, and took off after him. Here we go again. The men emerged into a large chamber. About 100 people were scattered about, drinking dark-colored wine out of golden goblets. At least, it looked like wine. Andrew recognized some of the people from the bar, but now, in the light of the torch-lit cavern, he could see their long, scaly snouts and thin pupils. A couple of them waved their long, shiny tails in his direction. A shady-looking guy in a robe winked at Epstein and motioned them over. Epstein nodded, gestured to Andrew, and the two of them snuck into what looked like an ancient bathroom. A handful of humans and reptilians were huddled around the sink, taking a live human baby out of a plastic baggie. A couple of them looked annoyed when Epstein and Prince Andrew entered the room and closed the door behind them.
Andrew?
Andrew's face turned pale. The voice was unmistakable. Mum? Everyone looked at the Queen with bated breath. This was incredibly awkward. The Queen fumbled a bit.
It's not as it appears, dearie. This is just, well, a once-in-a-blue-moon sort of thing.
Andrew exhaled with relief. Yeah, same with me. The Queen let out a little bit of a smile.
Well, I suppose eventually we'd have shared this together, so might as well be now. You're old enough.
She said, handing him a razor blade. Bottoms up, said Prince Andrew, slicing into the baby's adrenal gland and slurping the thick, silvery juice out of it.
Okay.
What?
Baby cannibalism.
We can't do
like,
full descriptions of babies.
Yeah,
well, come on.
No.
Well, Annie could get sued. She's in that country.
Okay. Well, can I just there's like two. I've had like two more lines. That was the worst of it. It's over. Okay.
Okay.
Let me just finish the story, please. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see where was it. Okay. So, Prince Andrew then handed the child to the Queen, whose skin crackled and molted as she seemed to grow 2 feet taller, leaned in and began to tear at its flesh with her crooked teeth.
All right, come on. All right. That's
What?
it. Okay.
Oh, come
Wrap
on,
it
you
up.
guys. Come
No.
on, please. There's one last little section and then it's done, I promise, okay?
All right. Make it not gross.
Okay. The other people in the small, cramped restroom with wild rage in their eyes took hold of the innocent child and began ripping it limb for limb.
Okay.
Thought there was going to be no more baby murder.
All right, well.
We don't. This is the first story that just can't finish.
Yeah, well, we're just
over.
going to cut you off right there.
There's like
Yeah,
a
I guess
whole
it-
other paragraph in what they're doing to the baby and how the baby is.
Okay. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, but we don't care.
All right, fine.
Yeah, so that's us shutting down Jake. I worried about this one because I would never shut Jake down. So, but alas, like in wrestling, it's a scripted act. It's a comedy bit.
I mean, admittedly, I think this is kind of a cheap move on my end. I think
you made me into the censor, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, I think I sort of couldn't figure out how to end it, and so I was like, okay, well, how can I do like a bullshit ending, but make it kind of funny still, at least. It's like a bad SNL skit where they got to find a way out.
I like the bit. I actually like the bit. I just I will never again be besmirched by you in your stories, you piece of shit.
Yeah, that's a joke really that only works once. And it's okay because the rest of the story is so good. It's like a weird like mixed media because like sometimes like in a way like sometimes like the voice and the narrative like kind of like goes with the track and the music. Like it's a weird thing. Like
I edit it that way sometimes when I can.
It's great. I love it.
If I can get like I try to like link up big events with beats and measures and stuff. That's definitely from like being a DJ. Like I just think in measures, so I always will look at a track and try to see if I can see a measure, and then I'm looking to like figure out cues that will match up with the measures for just
dope, man.
pure delicious effect. So it's funny because what I'm trying to do.
Notice it.
what I'm trying to do, like in this one especially, because it's like, oh, cool, it's a club thing, so I can make it sound cool. I don't have to make it sound like shitty because it's a story that's on purpose written, I don't know, like whatever, like Indiana Jones. So you need like almost like a more Disney soundtrack. But with this one, I was like, holy shit, I can make it sound cool. So it's funny because I'm just trying to make it like bang in the fucking, you know, I'm just trying to make the dance floor go, and you're also writing the most horrifying shit, and the cumulative effect is pretty. I like it.
I have like kind of a friendly voice. Like the story is kind of in a friendly voice in like a weird way. So it's sort of like dissonant to like how like kind of like dark and brooding the track is, and the contrast like actually is it's really funny, man.
Hell yeah! Do you want to introduce our last story tonight?
Yeah, our last story that we saved for Rev. Oh man, this is another stupid one. Okay, so here's the blurb for the story is called "The Democrats Are Ghosts."
What's stupid about that idea?
Well, so every now and again, an idea pops into my head that literally like causes fights with my girlfriend because I will chuckle myself to sleep because I think it's so damn funny. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. Like, we'll be lying, you know, asleep in bed, lights out, and I will like burst into like uncontrollable, like high pitched squeals, just like giggling about like a stupid idea like this. And The Democrats Are Ghosts is one such story. As soon as I came up with it while watching one of Dinesh's like absolute dumpster fire documentaries, I basically turned into a snot-filled, snorting tear machine and was a severe annoyance to anyone within a 5-foot radius as I struggled to stop laughing long enough to write it.
Yeah, you can tell like you were poisoned by that documentary. Which one was it?
Oh God, what was it? I think it was the one where he basically says like Democrats are like the real Nazis. It's like, and he's like, but what if the Democrats were Nazi? Like the ridiculous shit that he says like so seriously just like broke my brain. And so so I'll admit it's incredibly stupid, but this is one of the funniest ideas I thought I had. The story is almost obvious. The story is almost the most obvious parody, as it's written in the exact same style as Dinesh's shit movies. I even downloaded a transcript of one of his movies online that some boomer no doubt had spent hours like transcribing just to get the rhythm and feel of Dinesh. Because the story, and because the story, I wrote it in screenplay form. It actually doesn't translate as well to the sort of radio play format that we normally do. And so we sort of found that like narrative and bits of dialogue interspersed works a lot better than like a flat out screenplay. So that was like something that we learned like from doing this story. But really, at the end of the day, it's just a teardown of Dinesh and like what a horrible, horrible filmmaker he is.
Yeah, I quite like this one. There's a line from it. I won't spoil it for you, but I'll just say there's a line I can't get out of my head, and I had to look up where it's from, and now I know. But we'll talk about it after we drop the episode. Are you done giving us your beautiful intro, my friend?
I think that's a good setup.
Absolutely. I cannot wait. Let's do it.
Well, gentlemen, we might have one thing that could bring down Dinesh D'Souza.
What is that, Jake?
I want you to both open your emails right now. I have sent you I've sent you a little bit of something that I went through great lengths to procure. It's a PDF.
Oh my God.
Wow. Is it like a partial script of something?
Yeah. Okay. So let's intro this.
Dinesh D'Souza's Lost Script.
Dear listener, this week I have used my 3 Hollywood connections to get me something so top secret, its very existence on this show could get me, Julian, and Travis thrown into a halfway house for 8 months and possibly pay a $30,000 fine.
Oh, cool.
We have carefully weighed the consequences and decided that risking our God-given freedom is worth sharing with you, our beloved audience, a small insight into the mind of indie filmmaker and ex-convict Dinesh D'Souza. I know for a fact that the man who leaked this to me has since been executed, so please understand that some have paid the ultimate price in bringing this script to light. Without further ado, I present to you the first 10 pages of Dinesh D'Souza's latest film, Death in America. The Democrats are ghosts.
What? All right.
Interior, Dinesh D'Souza's apartment. Bedroom, morning. Dinesh is sleeping on a bed shaped like a race car. Sunlight creeps in through the window, causing him to rub his eyes and yawn. We can see him grinding his little feet into the soft Ben 10 themed blanket. Dinesh, voiceover.
What if the elite ruling class party wasn't elite at all?
Interior, Dinesh D'Souza's apartment. Bathroom, morning. Dinesh brushes his teeth in a rectangular mirror. Toothpaste is foaming around his lips. He is humming the theme song from the hit television show Law & Order Special Victims Unit. He rinses his toothbrush in the sink and plunks it back into a small plastic cup. Dinesh opens the mirror and reaches for a large bottle of Flintstones vitamins. Dinesh, voiceover.
For years, the Democrats have told us they are the party of equality, that they are the party of change, that they are the party that will save us from ourselves.
Interior, Dinesh D'Souza's apartment. Foyer, day. The doorbell rings. Dinesh, in sweats and a white t-shirt, walks over to answer the door. It's a delivery man. He's holding a large box. Dinesh gently takes it from him.
Say, do you ever wonder who the Democrats really are?
The delivery guy looks around, confused.
Excuse me?
What I mean is, are the Democrats really who they say they are?
The delivery guy shuffles a few steps away from Dinesh.
I really gotta get back to the truck, man.
Dinesh leans in and raises his eyebrows.
But tell me, are the Democrats even human beings at all?
My truck's double parked. I gotta go.
And with that, the delivery man exits down the long hallway and disappears down a flight of stairs. Interior, Dinesh D'Souza's apartment. Living room, day. Dinesh sits on the couch, opening the box from Amazon. Inside are about 40 copies of a book titled The Roots of Obama's Rage by Dinesh D'Souza. He takes a book out of the cardboard box and smells it. Dinesh, voiceover.
My conversation with the delivery driver had gotten me thinking.
Dinesh walks over to a quaint living room table and opens up a laptop. He checks the bestseller list for his book. It's listed at number 817. Dinesh orders 40 more copies. Dinesh, voiceover.
Could it be that the Democrats are merely leftover phantoms from the days of wizards and warlocks? How do they seem to always stay alive while our great conservative thinkers wither away and die? Could it be that the Democrats are actually ghosts?
Interior, Dinesh D'Souza's apartment. Bedroom, night. Dinesh is curled up in his bed with his jammies on. He's reading Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix beneath a small light attached to the headboard. He closes the book, tucks it away in his nightstand, and rolls onto his back. Dinesh stares up at the glow-in-the-dark stars on his bed. This is you bastard. You knew exactly what you were doing assigning this part to me. Dinesh stares up at the glow-in-the-dark stars on his bedroom ceiling, lost in thought. Dinesh, voiceover.
The more I thought about it, the more plausible it seemed. I decided I would pay a visit to my old friend, Professor Geet, at Dartmouth University the following day. But first, a good night's sleep.
Dinesh rolls over to flick the switch on the small lamp when he comes face to face with a ghastly apparition. In the darkness, Dinesh can just make out the face of Hillary Clinton. Her eyes are solid black holes, and her forked tongue juts out of her unhinged jaw in an inhuman and terrifying fashion. But the vision fades as quickly as it had appeared. Dinesh warily scans the bedroom once more before flicking out the light, plunging the room into darkness. Cut 2. Exterior, city bus, the next day. Dinesh sits quietly as he rides the public bus. Every so often, a piece of fruit flies from off camera, pelting him in various areas of his body. Dinesh, voiceover.
As much as I tried to shake it, I couldn't help but find more and more similarities between Democrats and intelligent gravity fields that stalk people in the middle of the night.
A grapefruit flies from... A grapefruit flies from off-screen, hitting Dinesh squarely in the groin, doubling him over in pain.
It would be difficult, though. How was I to convince those brainwashed by the Democrat corporate media that their idols were nothing more than ancient ectoplasm summoning enough strength to appear solid for 20 minutes at a fundraising event? Perhaps Professor Geet would have the answers I was searching for.
Cut 2. Interior, Dartmouth University, Professor Geet's office, day. Professor Geet, 70s, sits behind a large oak desk, flanked by bookshelves stuffed with large cloth hardcovers. He's leaning back in a large leather desk chair, his hand stroking his beard in thought. Dinesh, voiceover.
The professor is an old friend of mine. He was instrumental in helping me with my book, What's So Great About Christianity, and Life After Death, The Evidence. Available now on Amazon.
Finally, Professor Geet opens his mouth to speak.
It's interesting what you say.
Dinesh nods quietly.
Well, I'm not an expert, as you know. I've done a fair amount of reading in my studies involving Christianity and the afterlife. And what I can say is this. Ghosts are often described as barely visible wispy shapes.
Just like Democrats.
Some people believe the ghost or spirit never leaves Earth until there is no one left to remember the one who died.
Also like Democrats. Interesting.
And of course, the idea that ghosts are merely those who stay on Earth because they have unfinished business.
Dinesh lights up.
Well, that's Democrats for sure. They won't stop until they've taken my health care, my guns, and my ability to control a woman's body.
Right you are. Ever the student, Dinesh.
Dinesh gets up from his chair and adjusts a large section of his underpants that has worked its way deep inside his butt crack.
Why is there a wedgie in all of your scripts?
Because Jake's ass is designed to suck in any piece of clothing. It swallows clothing.
It speaks to the human experience.
Have you ever seen a space movie where there's a breach in the side of the ship and it just starts fucking sucking everything in? That's Jake's asshole. Cut 2. Interior, Dartmouth University, campus church, day. Dinesh sits quietly in the empty chapel, pondering the wise words of his old professor. Dinesh, voiceover.
Could it really be that these dangerous phantasms that feed off the energy of the living had not only convinced the American public that they were real, live human beings, but also gotten citizens to vote for them?
A noise draws Dinesh's attention. He glances over his shoulder to see a figure disappearing into the small confession box. Dinesh, voiceover.
We already know about the deceased voters casting votes for Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Perhaps there was a deeper meaning to this after all.
Dinesh stands and carefully makes his way towards the back of the church. He hesitates for a moment before opening the door to the confessional box and disappearing inside. Interior, Dartmouth University, campus church, confessional box. Dinesh sits uncomfortably in the small wooden box. He can just make out a shadowy figure on the other side of the box through a small wicker grate. An old, strange-sounding voice speaks up.
What is your confession, my son?
Father, forgive me, for I have sinned.
Go on.
I want to believe that the Democrats are real, living people who are misguided, but I can't help but believe that they are demonic entities hell-bent on murdering unborn babies and providing a safety net for the less fortunate.
A grave problem indeed.
I'm here for guidance, Father. Do I expose these wraiths for what they are, or do I merely fight them on their own terms, on Twitter and YouTube, possibly Telegram if I'm banned again?
Be careful, my son. You anger forces you do not understand.
Dinesh looks a little disturbed. There's something threatening about the priest's tone.
But Father, does the Lord not teach us to vanquish evil? To slay the unholy and return the glory to God?
A withered old hand rips through the wicker gate, grabbing Dinesh by his throat. With surprising strength, the hand yanks him into the wall, bringing Dinesh face to face with George Soros. His eyes are sunken in and his breath reeks of decaying flesh.
Like pale meteors spent worlds, the angels drop from the firmament in the unsleeping matter. King of phenomenon, monarch of form, Satan alone lives.
Dinesh lets out a horrifying scream. Then silence. He looks around But the apparition is gone. Dinesh slinks back into the wooden bench, his eyes glazed over. His breath is shallow and burdened. He stumbles out of the confession box. Interior, Dartmouth University, campus church, continuous. Dinesh's eyes go wide. The church is now full, with many people crowded into the flat wooden pews. Shaking with fear, Dinesh drops his glasses. They clatter to the floor and the sound echoes through the silent church. Every single head turns around and looks directly at him. Some of the faces are familiar. There's Chuck Schumer and Kamala Harris. But something is off. Their eyes are black and their skin pale. Some of the spirits open their mouths wide as if to scream, but nothing comes out. Dinesh tries to yell, but instead, words begin flowing out of his mouth.
I think every American citizen has the right to earn a living wage?
He immediately vomits blood onto the cold concrete floor of the church. The figures in the pews begin to stand one by one, facing Dinesh.
I think it's imperative that we break up the big banks.
He drops to the floor, clasping at his chest. More of the figures stand. Dinesh's vision grows blurry. He wipes his eyes. Tears are streaming down his face.
Please, help me.
A figure of a gnarled old man floats a couple of inches off the ground, gliding down the center aisle like some kind of demonic bride. He's waving his index finger. It's almost hypnotic. As the figure gets closer, we can just make out who it is. Senator Bernie Sanders. He looks down at Dinesh. There's pity in his hollow black eyes.
Please, I beg of you.
So be it. With that, Sanders raises his arms above his head. He begins muttering something under his breath. His eyes shift from black to white, and electricity begins to pop and fizzle around his body. Without warning, the ground opens up, creating a giant crag down the center of the church. Dinesh's eyes go wide as he watches black creatures climb out from the glowing red depths and drag the entire Democratic Party, kicking and screaming back into the depths of hell. Then, silence. Dinesh wipes the sweat off his brow. Cautiously, he glances up at Bernie Sanders. Bernie looks softer now, sweeter, and altogether more human. Dinesh glances around the church. Everything is back to normal.
But what happened to the Democrats?
Sanders leans in with a twinkle in his eye. A small bird from a nearby rafter flutters down and lands on a nearby pew.
Don't worry, son. I am the Democrats now.
Smash to black.
Whew.
Well,
wow.
I can understand he doesn't want that to get out because it's fire.
Yeah, it's cool because he kind of starts it with this like autobiography and then it turns into this kind of ghost story which sort of matches the theme.
Oh, I love turning you down to hear you better.
Yeah. I sounded so young and passionate then.
Yeah, you think that this has aged you?
Yeah.
Good thing that we waited for you to fall apart before we started our Twitch stream.
I think going to one Q rally aged me.
I think going to one Bernie rally made me feel like the opposite.
Yeah, it definitely.
We have to do one for one, like CBD and THC.
Yeah, exactly. We can't. Yeah, I mean, we can't have an uneven ratio.
Well, that was really fun, man. That was our first story night. I don't know, man. I love this format, and I'm sure we can experiment with it as well. I mean, obviously, we can try to do almost anything we want. So we'll be thinking about it, and this will happen every Thursday now. At the same time, I have the little timer set up like in the Twitch channel. So go and follow us on Twitch if you don't already, if you're watching. And what else, Jake? I mean, do you want to answer some questions?
Yeah, sure. We can do a couple questions really quick.
All right, hit Jake with a couple questions, and then we're going to call it a night, beautiful people. Wish I had said that in the Marilyn Manson voice.
Or if you've got questions for Julian too. He's got interesting answers to stuff as well.
This is a celebration of your storytelling, a curated celebration. And who knows?
But there are we've got other sort of like trilogies and sort of like series. Like somebody I saw in chat earlier, somebody was saying QSN Night, which I think would be really fun in this format.
There's a story also that you wrote that we never aired because the person basically ghosted on us.
Yeah.
And we can just mask the actual identity of the person, and we could just tell you that story. We would just give them a fake name. What do you think of that, Jake?
That would be fun. The story is about. I'll give you a little preview. What we used to call a preview. The story was about this guy who we were gonna have on, and maybe we'll have on in the future. But it was about him storming Area 51 with Brett Stevens, the journalist, and this was shortly after the bedbug gate went down.
So we'll release the bedbug story for you, and also, a couple questions have come in the meantime. So are you guys going to do another episode with Robert Evans? Robert Evans, I think we definitely will. He apparently still answers our DMs, so we're grateful. And so maybe, that's a very possible thing because it was very, very fun the last time, and I loved that story.
Swag, story in space. Yes, we will eventually, of course, do a Space Force story. Sort of I'm waiting for the first like hilarious thing to go wrong with that, and then maybe that'll springboard some inspiration. But absolutely, we are overdue for one.
Jake and Julian, do you think Dinesh believes what he peddles? I do think he believes.
Yeah, I think
he
thinks he's good. I think he thinks he's good.
He's very stupid. He's a combination of stupid and self-assured, and exploitative.
Yo-Yo Ma, we are. Travis is kind of like the only thing we have going for us, so we're not close at all to kicking him. He's probably closer to kicking us both off the pod and just doing like the Travis view.
Actually, the question. I'm sorry, Jake. I'm sorry. I have to read you the question, Jake. Julian, how close are you and Travis to kicking Jake off the podcast?
Oh, well, that's a different answer altogether.
Sorry, buddy. Ugh, awkward moment there where I had to correct you on that question. Yeesh.
Well, I can tell you the answer to that. Never.
Clip this, post this, cringe. It hurts.
Everybody here knows that you're nothing without me.
It's so true. Who are you betting on, Dragons or the Giants to win the war? I would say
I'm the heart.
The Giants are going to win the war between the Giants and the Dragons. What do you think, Jake? I'm with the Giants. I think they could take down, grab the neck of a dragon and pull the dragon down.
I guess Giants could be cool. Yeah, maybe if they're kind of like the sort of Prometheus style beings.
When can we start getting Travis drops? Man, Travis is dropping stuff every day. It's called his Twitter fucking post, man. Go and fucking read the Bible. Go and read the Bible. If you don't know them all by heart, then you're nothing to him. You're a worm. Travis
pulling a Biden.
Excuse me, I'm getting Travis in my headset. Okay, he wants you to know that he doesn't care at all about any of you. He's told me that he doesn't like our audience very much and he looks down on them. Oh, yes, and he's saying to contact him in his DMs, his Twitter DMs, and to tell him a good argument for why he should like you. So be very, very kind and gentle if you contact him, and just give him an argument to like you. Anyways, just damn, I got that voice.
Stoutfish, new conspiracies I'm into. The conspiracy that I'm most into right now is the DNC rigging the primaries for Biden. And taking all of I'm my biggest conspiracy is did
he's also on that Corona shit. We're gonna do a Corona episode soon.
Although neither of these are really conspiracies. These are just sort of like things that are happening.
But you still get pilled on them, even if they're true. You still go super deep with them.
No, but I guess conspiracy is I'm starting to wonder whether Bloomberg actually ever wanted to be president, or if it was some back deal with the DNC where basically they were build this infrastructure and then at the time basically we'll give you some bargaining chips down the line, because now what he's essentially done is gifted his entire infrastructure over to Joe Biden, which is essentially a $700 million campaign donation without violating campaign finance laws. So I'm curious if he ever wanted to win.
I'm being told we have to smash to the dick pills. Get your blue chew at bluecock.chew/Jake. Make sure that you stock up on those. Very important also to cure the swine flu and coronavirus. They will take care of you over at swinecock.flu / Jake point fear
I want to let everybody know that if you are looking for hand sanitizer still and can't find any,
oh my God,
gas stations are a good place to look. People don't think to look there, so that's that's a survival pro tip.
You just can't.
Your boy.
Terrible. Seriously. You're no longer going to be guesting on this podcast. Okay. So I think that's it for us. Fred is doing well. His house, we've helped him with some house searching. And I would say he's in good spirit in general. His GoFundMe has been nice. We're going to keep that going over time to make sure that he's covered. His current nurse is very, very kind. I know her, met her personally and spent some time with her. Very, very kind. And
yeah,
I don't know.
She's great.
It was good. It was good hanging out with him. That wasn't too long ago. So just a couple of days ago. So, we'll continue to, check in on him, obviously, and keep you updated. All right. Jakey, any last words? Did you want to say the classic thing or?
Twitch viewers, may the deep dish bless you and keep you.